Call the meeting of the Scio Township Zoning Board of Appeals to order. This is the April 20th, 2023 regular meeting. Could you please call the roll?
Hoff?
Here.
Culbertson?
Here.
Ramey?
Here.
Walsh? Here. Shields?
Here. All right, next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I would ask for someone to make a motion to amend the agenda, because I don't think I can make it. But what was supposed to be added on under other business but didn't quite make it. Actually, it made it. If you look at your binders and you look real careful, there's this particular page that's kind of left off that refers to this. And what I'd like to discuss is pay for the ZBA members. So I would ask to have a motion to add that to the agenda under other business number 11.
Motion to add.
Support.
Okay, motion by Ms. Ramey, supported by Mr. Walsh to amend the agenda to add pay for ZBA members under 11. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll add that on at the end. And I'll explain how it came up. The next item on the agenda is the swearing in. Persons who will be stating anything on the record, either for the public hearing or for other matters, I would ask you to please stand and raise your right hand if you will be speaking. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public hearing. And I'm slightly confused here, and it might go back to the history of this, but the agenda indicates that the public hearing is for variance number 23001, Jane Harlow for 161 Luella, H-08-22-392-039 to allow construction of a new accessory structure with a 5-foot rear yard setback rather than the required 35 rear yard setback pursuant to Section 36-75 Schedule of Regulations. The only reason I bring it up as a question mark here is because the actual variance number 23001 on the face sheet in our binders says the purpose of the request is requesting variance to tear down and haul away existing garage, including floor, and install new floor and erect metal garage/shed. And I know that this particular matter had to be reposted. Is it because of the inaccuracy of what was it for?
So the first notice was for a side yard setback. This is actually a rear yard setback.
Okay.
So the public hearing notice is it's written for public hearing, that's the correct setback.
Okay.
That's the correct variance that's being sought.
So why does
That's what the applicant wrote down, but in review of the application,
understood.
we found that the variance was for the rear yard setback.
Understood. Okay. Well, we'll open the public hearing, and at this time I'll summarize the procedures or rules to be followed during the hearing. First, I'll call on the petitioner or petitioner's representative to present statements in support of the appeal, along with any supporting evidence. Then the petitioner, his or her agent or attorney may present his or her case, including presenting witnesses on his or her behalf. After which time, members of the ZBA shall report on their site inspection, if any, and any conversations which the petitioner may have had. After which members of the public who support the petitioner can speak and correspondence is read. Next, members of the public who oppose the petitioner speak and correspondence is read. After which time, I, in my discretion as chairperson, may permit the petitioner a rebuttal within limits. After which time, I will, upon motion of any ZBA member, announce the close of the hearing or announce continuation of the public hearing to another specified date and time if the hour is late or if additional pertinent information must be obtained. After which time the ZBA members will deliberate the request and decide the issues, or if a majority of members decide that more information is needed, the issue may be postponed to a future hearing. If a motion is made to either grant or deny the variance, we will be indicating that in the signed decision, which will be handed to the petitioner at the conclusion of the hearing. And that's pretty much the procedure which we will be following today. So who on behalf of the petitioner will be speaking? And if you come up here to the table, take a seat, and it's your opportunity to present any statements in support of your appeal along with any supporting evidence. Could you identify first yourself for the record, please?
My name is Jane Harlow and I'm your petitioner.
Good evening.
Good evening. And my support is my neighbor Jillian Kelly, who I think you know, and my contractor Todd Coffey.
Jillian Carey.
Carrie. Did I say Kelly?
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry.
What they needed.
I'm looking for a variance. My garage is very old, probably built in the early 1920s. It doesn't allow for today's cars to be parked in there. And it's in major disrepair. So I want to build a new one. And then I based my assumption that the variance was for my side yard based on how the house is on the property in relation to the road. Because my driveway goes out to the north part of Luella. So to me, that was a side yard, not a backyard. So I was asking for just an additional 5-foot variance on that side because I was told that 10 foot was the present guidelines for setbacks on your side yard. Then I found out that the orientation that I was assuming was not correct based on how it was laid out, you know, back in the 20s. I want to tear down the present garage, put a new pad, cement pad down, and have a new garage built. That's the only place on the property that it can really go without other major things happening. The west side of my property is, what is that? The drain?
Flood drain.
Flood
If you're going to be speaking, you will have to swear you in, and please also sign the sheet.
Sure.
Will you? So you want me to swear you in?
Oh, sure.
That's what I was asking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
before.
I
don't know
thought you
whether
meant for the
heard us.
petitioner, and I guess you need to
Yeah,
be sworn in
I
too.
don't think I'll have to speak, but I just came to.
You raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And please sign the sheets. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Harlow.
So I'm asking for the variance for the backyard to allow my new structure to be about 5 feet from the property line. I have a statement from the person who owns the house directly next to me. Its address is Park Road, but it's butts up against my property.
Would you like to present that to us for the record?
Sure. The owner of the house is Daria Garodnia,
Thank you.
and she does not live in the house presently. She is in somewhere down south in one of the Carolinas.
I'll just read this into the record.
Okay.
Ms. Harlow has presented me a piece of paper that says, "To whom it may concern, I, Daria, D-A-R-I-A, Garodnia, G-O-R-O-D-N-I-A, the owner of 5,000 Park Road property, do not have any objection to my neighbor, Jane Harlow, building a new garage on her property. Sincerely, Daria Garodnia."
I should probably take that.
See this? Pardon?
I'll take it and turn it in with everything else and put
Let's
it in.
mark that
exhibit
as,
one.
let's mark this exhibit A,
All right.
so that when it's. I'll pass that along for anyone to.
You guys want to look at it?
That's okay with you.
Well, we have another email. Yeah, we might as well do this at the same time. And I think this is part of the record, so I don't think we have to mark this as an exhibit. But our packet includes from Fran Zuma from the township, a copy of an email addressed to the ZBA from Donald McDevitt, DMCDEVITT9500 dated April 5th, 2023, 3:19 p.m. Subject April 20th, 2023 hearing, in which it's electronically signed by Donald and Kathleen McDevitt, but it actually refers to my property, and as I will be unable to attend, I assume we're talking about Donald McDevitt because that's where the email came from. But in any event, it does say that his property backs up to the property at 161 Luella, and I will be unable to attend the hearing, but has absolutely no objection to the rear yard variance that has been requested. Signed respectfully, Donald and Kathleen McDevitt, 124 Burton Avenue, Scio Township. Okay, so that one deals with Mr. McDevitt, who lives next to your property to the north, Ms. Harlow, is that correct?
Northeast, yes.
Northeast? Got it. And 5,000 Park Road is directly to your east?
Yes.
Okay. You have you do have neighbors to the northeast, it says 153. I assume that's Luella. Have you discussed that with?
Yes, it's my property. That's Jillian's.
Okay. Great. And how long have you, out of curiosity, I don't want to cut you off. If there's anything else you wish to say, please go ahead.
If you have questions, I mean,
I'm sure we'll have questions, but I wanted to make sure that you don't have anything else right at this moment.
not specific, no.
Okay.
Should we go back and follow the order of things? I think we've gotten,
Say again?
should we go back and follow the order of things? I think we've gotten supporting stuff in and
Yeah,
we've gotten out of.
we're a little bit out of sync, but sometimes our procedures are flexible.
Yes.
I just wanted to understand everything for the record here. According to our packet of materials, it appears that the current structure, the garage, is, according to one document we have here, 5.5 feet from the east property line. And I'm referring to the drawing that's in our packet, which is, what do you call this?
Graph paper.
Graph paper. Thanks. It's been a long time since I was in grade school. Did you draw that?
Yes,
Man, that's fine. No, I just wanted to get who got it. Where'd you get the 5.5 feet? Because there's also the statement here, if this is an accurate measurement.
well, it's a little iffy to exactly where the property line is, so I just basically measured from my fence to the garage.
Okay.
We found the marker,
Yeah.
at the back of the property, but the front of the property, I don't know where the marker is.
Okay. And it looks like your fence pretty much goes directly north and south?
Yes.
Okay. Could you explain a little bit more your statement that there are other major things that would have to be done if the structure would be located to the west?
I'd have to put in a driveway, get permission to build over the drain.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. No, no, you can't. build
Sir, you're out of order. Could you just, we'll take care of everything. You'll be allowed to speak.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
we've got a
I didn't know
record.
She realized that, I'm sorry.
Well, we can correct it, anything. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Where's the drain field?
To the west of, in the area where I have indicated the pond.
Yeah. Is that, well, the pond's there, but.
Yeah, and the pond is larger. That isn't the exact west property
Okay.
line, but
And where is the drain field then?
on the west side,
West of the pond?
including the pond and then what property is left on the west side. If you have an aerial view,
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at now. It doesn't have the drain field. At least mine doesn't.
no, I just indicated the pond. I don't know exactly the dimensions of the drain field. They were putting that in when I moved in there,
When did you move in?
2015.
Is it safe to say that it's not under the mature trees that you show on the overhead photo?
That the drain field's not under there?
It would be between there and.
So it would be a little bit south of the pond area. Was my understanding before that was put in that whole area in the spring would flood, major flood. Even going over into Jillian's yard and Mr. McDivitt's yard.
The flooding, you mean? Okay. Now, you also brought with you a couple of witnesses on your behalf. We have Ms. Carey and, I'm sorry, sir. You
Coffee.
Coffee?
Correct.
Who would you like to call first?
Miss Carey.
Okay. Ms. Carey, go ahead and identify yourself for the record and present your information.
Okay, I'm Jillian Carey. I live at 153 Luella Avenue. And for full disclosure, I need to say that I am a trustee, but I would not be here if it wasn't for my neighbor. And my property would be directly affected by whatever she does on her property. So my Luella curves, as you can see. So my house is directly north and my driveway going all the way back, I look over her backyard. So when I look out my kitchen window, I look over the west part of her property. So I was directly involved with the flood drain that it took us 3 years to put in because it was major flooding. So this is before Jane purchased the house, and right as they were closing, all of this was finished. So I know exactly where the flood drain, everything is. So for her property.
Well, where's the flood drain on the map? Would you be able to
see the pond okay, it's in between my other neighbor and my house on the north side, but
you'll have to identify your neighbors so that you.
Okay, so that would be at one.
Doesn't, for the record, we just have to establish.
Okay, I'm gonna use this now. So my other neighbor at 139 Luella, so you can see that on here, that would be north of me. The flood drain is all the way from in the back of our properties, along our property line, going across my front, and then all the way to the side of Jane's property up to the curve there. But, and then it goes under the road into there's a big swamp on the other side of Luella. However, in her property, they had to put in a special drain because of, if not, that retention pond would overflood and it would flood out half of her property. So that's where that part of the drain is it would be exactly south of that pond.
Flooding in which direction?
It's
on her property.
On her property. So it's south of the pond where the opening is.
Right. Where does it run on her property, in what direction?
Well, it hooks in at some point. I don't know exactly where, but.
You said it was south of the pond. I'm just trying to find out which way it runs, that's all.
Well, where it runs,
Could I make a suggestion?
it's under the ground, so I don't know exactly how they had it hooked up.
Is there anybody present who could draw on one of these?
Sure.
And we can make it an exhibit?
If you know where it runs.
If you
don't know where it runs.
Okay, well, it has to hook into the, where it goes under Luella to the west to dump into the swamp over there. So wherever they decided to hook it in. But I can tell you exactly where the opening is on her property.
When you say opening, what do you mean?
Well, there's a big opening, so when the retention pond overfills, it will drain into this opening, and then it goes under the ground across under Luella to the west.
So the opening would be to the west of the pond?
No, it's to the south of the pond,
Okay.
but then the drain itself goes to the west, under the road. This was a major construction. It was huge.
Well,
Yeah.
I suppose can you show us where the opening is on this map here? I'll use mine, we'll mark it as exhibit B.
Mark yours, okay. I don't know if this pen is gonna show up.
So it just a question.
Hold on just a second, let me get this done first.
Well, it was a question.
Yes or
So
no?
this is an overflow drain for that
For the whole,
retention pond.
for her property, yes. And I didn't bring pictures of the flooding. I mean, this was so years ago and we don't have flooding anymore, so. Which,
That's a good
you know, I try to
thing.
think, yeah. So the opening is about right here.
How big is it?
It's like the size of a bucket, but I don't know how big of,
How big of a bucket?
like a 5-gallon bucket, the opening
Okay.
of a 5-gallon
Okay.
bucket,
That's fine.
maybe a little bit more.
And
But
you
the
don't know, all right, and you
So it
don't, hold on, just for the record. We have to
Yep.
do record here. You've drawn a circle where the opening is, correct?
Mhm.
You have to answer out loud, please.
Okay, I drew a circle where the opening is.
Okay,
Okay.
on exhibit B. Don't draw anything
this
else.
is-
Well, hold on, do you know where it runs? Don't have to draw, just, do you know where it runs?
Yes, it runs under the road over here. There's a big swamp over here. So it's connected in there somewhere.
Okay, and this would be, for example, this would be then in the southwest quadrant of the property.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Exhibit B, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you.
Can you just pass it around just so?
Oh,
Essentially,
I should, I'm sorry.
That's okay, I'll grab it.
Essentially, there's a culvert under Luella
Mhm.
in the southwest part of her property.
Yes, yeah.
Patrick, have you seen, Mr. Shields, have you seen it?
Thank you, that's
Do
helpful.
you need to see it? Okay, anything else, Ms. Carey?
Yes, so looking at her property, there was an idea of having, or it was a suggestion, maybe to put the driveway on the other side of her property, or on the other side of her house, and that is dangerous. So looking out my kitchen window, I can see the back of her property. So her property is much lower than the road, so that would be a slope down. And not only that, around that curve, it is, you can't really see around the curve when you're driving, and there's been many accidents that people.
Okay, for the record, because we don't have this yet,
Okay.
what curve are you referring to?
The curve of Luella.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so, and in fact, her granddaughter was hit head on going around that curve when somebody was speeding over there, because you really can't see anybody going around that curve. But anybody living in the area knows how to, drive that safely.
What's the significance of the curve?
Well, if her driveway.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
When in order to get the record established, I'm sure you know this, we both can't talk at the same time. So my question to you is, what is the significance of the curve of Luella to the application for the variance here?
it was shared that somebody had suggested for her to put the driveway and garage on the other side, and that is not feasible. I mean, it would be unsafe, not just for her, it would be unsafe for, the neighborhood. And also being so low from the from the road, for her to back in and back out, or to leave her property would be very dangerous. So I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
The marker that she was talking about, the boundary proper marker, that is in my property, and there's a telephone pole and it's over there. And I believe tried to measure, and it's about 6.5 feet from her garage now is about 6.5 feet from that boundary line, from that marker.
You're talking about a marker or a boundary line?
It's a steel marker.
Okay, so do you know what the boundary line actually is?
Well, okay, back in the day, they told me, and this is Don McDevitt behind me, he's lived there for 35 years. And he said that these steel, they put the steel and the markers in the corner of the property. And those back, because our neighborhood is one of the oldest, they use the chain links to mark them. I don't, if you remember those. So he said that that was the most accurate type of measurement even to this day. And that's the only marker we have for our 4 properties in that corner. All the rest of them have been removed. So just looking at that, I went back there, and her garage is at least 6 feet over. So it does, she said, what, 5.5? You were questioned the 5 or 5.5. So it's more than that.
Okay,
Okay, I think that's it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Coffey?
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Well, thank you. So I guess the most important thing is we're not looking to change the existing location. The garage already is in the location. So when on the variance she'd asked about the 5-foot setback, we're actually looking.
I should ask you to do this for me. Your full name, please?
Todd Coffey,
And where do you live?
Milan, Michigan. Our company is Enhanced Living Services.
Oh, okay, you're the contractor?
Yeah, a very good friend, and so we haven't actually contacted them, just trying to help her get going with it.
All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing I would bring up is we're looking to put it in the same location. We're looking to make it larger to the west so she can get a car in. I'm not looking on encroaching anymore that's already has. So what I consider the side marker, which is kind of why she started wrong, I would have considered that to be the side marker where the driveway is in location to the road, but the way it's laid out, I guess back in the day, that's actually the rear marker of the property. And we're not looking to go any closer to that. We're looking to take down the structure that's there and use that same location.
Is the structure that's there actually being used as a garage?
No.
No,
Well,
my car won't fit.
yeah, I'm sorry.
So what's the size of the existing garage? Roughly?
14 by 21.
And how big of a structure do you propose?
24 by 24.
Okay,
But you're saying the
More or
sum
less.
total of the expansion would all be to the west?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, nothing would go towards the east.
could the new proposed structure be situated more to the west than the existing structure?
You would have to change a driveway location and you wouldn't be able to enter.
Well, you wouldn't have to change the existing driveway location. You're talking about
Because you can't turn with the house where it's at. You wouldn't be able to make the turn and then get into the garage on anywhere of the west side of that garage. If you moved it.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Unless, of course, the structure was turned 90 degrees, then you could pull in with a curve.
I guess you could, but to make it 90 degrees, you'd have to move it too far over towards that drain you're talking about to make a turn and then have the depth of the garage.
How do we know that? I mean,
I just think that if I
where
go-
the drain is,
I can tell you where the culvert is and I'm pretty sure
Ms. Carey has indicated, have you seen where she's marked it?
I mean, I've been there and where she's explaining to you, I'm understand. I don't think anybody's gonna let me build a building that backs up to an area that was already, they put a huge project in to kind of change the problem. I don't think they're gonna want me building on top of that. I mean, that area, when I first went to her house, that was 2 foot deep in water. The project they put in had to have been hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not just a little culvert. I mean, it's a big engineered project.
Okay, but and the only reason I'm asking is whether there's a possibility that could be moved over a certain number of feet without disturbing the drain improvements. But if we don't know where the improvements are.
Well, I mean, the township has them, obviously. I mean, this is a very large project.
Ms. Krebs, do we have any information on that?
I don't have any information.
Okay,
And I think, like I said, if you wanted to make that 90-degree turn to the west, and then by the time you add depth, 20 to 24 feet of depth, you're getting into that area, I'm pretty sure that's engineered not to be built on.
okay.
That would be I'm pretty sure that's what we would find. And that's why I never even looked at it, because you look out there, you see that it's an engine.
What?
Well, when you talk about building in the other location, when you look out and you know that culvert's there, and when you watch this project go on, you're real certain they don't want you building on top of that. I mean, that's kind of a given. And so we never even looked at that location for that reason, sir.
Okay, anything else?
No, not at all.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Harlow?
Not really. I would like to be able to pull into the new garage going, straight into it, not at an angle or not making a turn. In the area around there, most of the homes have garages that allow this, and it's a mishmash of all different kinds of setbacks. So I don't think I'm asking anything out of the ordinary.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm elderly and want to drive straight and back up straight.
Have you ever used the garage?
Not to park car, no.
This is storage.
The storage, lawnmower and gardening supplies and so forth.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I don't believe so.
All right. I'll ask members of the ZBA to report on any site inspection and any conversations with the petitioner. I've driven by there, I think 3 times now over the last several weeks, but I've had no conversation with the petitioner or anyone else. Mr. Walsh?
I drove out there probably a month ago when this first came up before it was canceled. I also drove out yesterday to look at the site again and take pictures. I did speak with the applicant for probably about 10 minutes.
Could you disclose for us the nature of the conversation?
Conversation was about the setbacks. I'll be honest, I misunderstood, and I was still looking at the north as part of the 35-foot without then going back later today and reading and understanding that the side that's only 10 feet, so it's not an issue.
So that was part of the
That was
conversation.
part of the conversation.
Just asking for conversations with the petitioner at this point.
Yeah. Also talked about the fact that the garage was in bad shape, asked if the car could be put in. Heard from the applicant about her conversation, or at least the letter from her neighbor saying that the neighbor had no issues.
All right. Mr. Shields?
I drove by twice, and then the second time was I had misoriented the side yard, the backyard. So finally understood it and made a lot more sense.
Oh, when you went back the second
Yeah,
time, is
yeah.
that what you're trying to tell us?
Exactly.
Any conversations with the petitioner or
No.
anyone?
Nope.
Ms. Ramey?
I drove by and looked at the property. I had no conversations with the applicant.
Ms. Culbertson?
I drove by and drove into the driveway, looked in the backyard and did not have any conversations with the applicant.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who support the petitioner, who desire to speak at this time? Either here or by Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
No hands raised, and there's no one here.
Oh, I have a hand raised.
Okay. The person who has the hand raised, could you identify yourself, please?
Pam Boyd, and I have just asked her to unmute herself. So
Say it.
Yes, Pam Boyd, and I have been to in front of her property, and it is a very treacherous curve. For her to be able to back out straight is very important. And depending on the weather, people driving that curve, it can be a challenge, as well as still being wet. And so I support her, having been in the neighborhood several times. I support her efforts. Thank you.
Okay, do you live in that area, Ms. Boyd?
I do not. I live across the highway, but I have been to her house before, in the front of her house, and spoken with her. And I happen to know her neighbor, Ms. Carey. So I've been to Ms. Carey's house a lot.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who support the petitioner desiring to speak?
yes, Kathleen Brandt, I've asked her to unmute herself.
Kathleen Brandt.
Hello, this is Kathleen Brandt. I'm a Scio resident. Just informational. If I understand this situation, the house was built sometime in the 1920s. It seems to me that predates any zoning requirements that Scio Township would have in place. I don't think or understand how you would be able to restrict based on newer zoning for a property that in a structure that was built pre-zoning regulation. So I would hope that you would consider that, and it would be untenable for anyone to drive in, make a 90-degree turn, and then be expected to back out in reverse, making a 90-degree turn to get out of a structure placed in a different location. I believe you should honor this because it predates any Scio zoning ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who support the petitioner? No one's here in the room, so anybody by Zoom?
No other hands are raised.
No other hands raised, okay. Are there any members of the public who oppose the petitioner who desire to speak? Raise your hand on Zoom.
There are no hands raised.
No hands raised, okay. There really isn't anything to rebut, but I'll give Ms. Harlow the opportunity to make a rebuttal in a short amount of time, if any.
I don't have any.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant by members of the board at this point?
I had just one, a question. You don't have a well or a drain field?
No,
on the side?
I'm on city. There was an area for it prior to when the water and sewer went in, but.
Jane, you have the spigot, you have an rear garden. There, that's right there by your back door.
Anything else, Ms. Culbertson?
No, that was my only question. Thank you.
Ms. Ramey?
No, I don't have any questions.
Mr. Walsh? Mr. Shields? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Shields, support by Mr. Walsh to close the public hearing. At this point, the ZBA will deliberate the request and decide the issues.
We need to vote on closing.
Say again?
Or yeah, we all for closing, we need to actually vote to
Oh,
close.
you know, we really should vote on motion, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. My mind was elsewhere. Call the roll.
Hoff,
Yes.
Culbertson.
Yes.
Ramey,
Yes.
Walsh, yes. Shields.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing is now closed when the ZBA will deliberate the request. There was a statement, or a statement made by one of the members of the public about the fact that this was predated the ordinances, and that's actually covered in Article 13 of the zoning ordinances for Scio Township, beginning with section 36-398, which indicates that certain existing lots, structures, or uses of lots and structures were lawful before the ordinance from which this chapter is derived was adopted, but have become non-conforming under the terms of the chapter and its amendments. It is the intent of this chapter to permit such nonconformities to remain until they are discontinued or removed, but not to encourage their survival, or where discontinuance or removal is not feasible, to gradually upgrade such nonconformities to conforming status. Nonconforming uses and structures shall not be enlarged, expanded, or extended, except as herein provided, and shall not be grounds for adding other structures and uses of lots and structures which are prohibited. Non-conforming uses and structures are declared by this chapter to be incompatible with structures and uses permitted in the various districts. Included in Article 13 are discussions of non-conforming lots, non-conforming structures, non-conforming uses. Repairs and maintenance, change of tenancy, expansion and substitution, and acquisition of nonconformities. With all due respect, I think it's pretty clear from the zoning ordinances that this structure appears to be non-conforming, and the fact that it was built in the 20s, which seems it was, well before the zoning laws zoning ordinances went into effect, merely indicate that it's not encouraged to be allowed to change from what it is initially. Any other comments by anybody? That's sort of a response to the one indicator. I understand also that if the structure was permitted to be moved to the west, it would have a bad turn. I wouldn't like it. And I think even younger people wouldn't like it either. However, it's a very small lot, and there's not a lot of alternatives here, unless I'm seeing something wrong. Mr. Walsh, what do you got on your mind on this one?
We have a non-conforming structure in existence that isn't compatible with modern society. You can't park a car in there. It was built in the 20s, a modern mid-size SUV you can't put in there, as well as have the equipment that goes with owning a house these days, a lawnmower, rakes, whatever. It's not, I guess my perspective is, I think a property owner has a right to have a garage that they can fit a car into. I think most of the other properties in the area do. If we're not changing the footprint, why not allow? I mean, we've done other things within the same footprint.
Well, this is gonna be the same footprint, it's gonna be
Well,
bigger.
the question is, for me, is the current one is measured, assuming the measurements are right, at 21 point something feet. They're looking to make it 24. I guess.
14 by 21 and 24.
Right, but the 14 to 24 is on the side, so it's not actually at issue. That setback is fine. The question is the 21 point, I think it was 3 to 24, which is in the setback. That would be an increase of the footprint of 2 point whatever feet. For me, the question is, do we allow the increase? If you're, again, I understand what the ordinance says, but I think a property owner has a right to a garage. And if they can do it within 21 point whatever, great. I think it would be an exceptionally harsh issue on our part to say that, yes, you have a right to a garage, but you have to move the driveway and find a way in your property to position it.
Mr. Chair, could I make a point of clarification?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So there's been a lot of confusion over the lot lines and what is front. So just so everyone understands,
East is back.
the east is the rear, the north is a side, the west and the south are fronts.
For corner.
For a corner. So the encroachment to the north that you're talking about, Mr. Welch,
Yes.
is actually into it. It doesn't even touch the side yard. The side yard is only a 10-foot setback. So it's closer than it is currently, but there's 20 feet and she's only required to have a 10-foot setback.
But
In other words, we're not increasing the nonconformity.
We're encroaching into the back though.
No, it's the line of the garage will be the same line on the east side.
No, I get that, but if we extend the garage to the north another 2 point some feet,
I see.
we're adding into the part on the rear.
Increasing the nonconformity.
So yes, it's staying in the same line. We're just increasing the footprint that's in violation of the rear. That's the only point I'm making. So for me, the question is, on the rear setback, which is the east side, it's currently approximated to be 21 point something, increasing it to 24 infringes more on the rear, which is the east side. And for me, that's the decision point.
Well, okay, but you have the neighbor on both of the neighbors that would be directly affected by that do not oppose. So
That's what?
that do not oppose.
Yes, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
important.
And I think that's important.
Mhm.
The immediate neighbors affected are not or have given their permission to this without, I'm not arguing that at all. Well, I'm not arguing anything at the moment.
No, we're discussing.
Let's, for the record, how much setback is required on this property, rear and side yard?
So the two fronts and the rear all require a 35-foot setback. The side, the north, requires 10. So this property actually, a regular normal lot would have 35 in the front, 35 in the rear, and 10 on each side. This property is encumbered on 3 sides by 35-foot setbacks. 2 fronts and a rear.
I have one more question for the petitioner.
Fire away.
There is.
We'll reopen the public hearing for
No,
this purpose only.
Okay, thank you. There, I noticed on the drawing that you did, you noted a walnut tree And can you describe the approximate age size of that walnut tree?
Huge and old.
Yeah, because so that would really, yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing again then, since we've got that. Is that agreeable to everybody? Everybody?
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Shields?
Is a very constrained piece of property. I spent a lot of time trying to think of how you would get in and back if you went around the corner. It's mind-numbing to think through the options and try to think about how you would do it. So I'm completely supportive of you having a normal-sized garage that you can use, that you can get your car in. And any questions, so we've got here, one of the things that we're supposed to address is this a substantial property right? And I think having a garage you can use is a substantial property right. And the fact that your neighbors to a person that are affected are supportive of it, I think is compelling.
I want to, unless someone else has something to say at this point, I just want to,
Yeah, I would add that I agree with the substantial property right. I also think that there are clear considerations with the detention pond that serves the neighborhood that was added. I'm sure that's a landmark walnut tree. It looked to be old enough to be a landmark walnut tree, which would, be sacrificed if it were moved directly west. And then the drainage, the tree.
The tree.
No, if they move the garage back
Oh.
in that direction. And I think, having the curve there, a blind curve, and having a driveway next to a blind curve is not, I agree about the safety. So I would say that there are special conditions that restrict this lot.
I just wanted to draw a distinction between what Mr. Shields said about a substantial property right, and Mr. Walsh's right to a garage. Because I think for all decisions such as this, we have to realize that there's a distinct difference between having a right to a garage or having a garage as a substantial property right. I'm not splitting hairs here. I think there's a really big difference in those two concepts. Now, is it important here? I'm not sure. But as we go along and we have this sort of thing, you got to appreciate a right to a garage, or is it a substantial property right? I remember, for example, that when we were deliberating a whole house generator, and I observed at that point that the whole house generator I thought was becoming a substantial property right, over the development. That's what I'm talking about. Could we have said, no, you can't have it anyway? Well, yeah, I think you could. So you can't say you have a right to it. It may be a substantial property right. That's all.
I guess I will clarify then, whether the garage exists now or not.
A garage.
Yeah, the non-conforming, even if it were a pad, the non-conforming is there. We're not actually potentially changing the non-conforming aspect of the property. We're just allowing, should the applicant get this, to build a structure on an existing non-conforming part of the property. Whether it's a garage, patio and picnic table, essentially from a ZBA standpoint, does it matter? As long as it's within the current non-conforming portion. I don't know, I'm just, that it's
Yeah,
I mean, it does because it's in the section 13 and the non-conforming structure and not modernizing, but.
I think I think it can't be ignored, but, I'd like to reopen and ask one other question of one of the witnesses. I think it should be a real quick question if that's okay with everyone. Mr. Coffey, is this expected new garage, one car, two car?
And would you consider it a 2-car by size, I guess? It's generally a 1-car that's going to be used with storage of the lawnmower.
In other words, going to have 2 doors?
No, it'd be 1 door, but by size, generally they would consider that a 2-car garage because you, in theory, could get a car stored against the wall. It'll have one single door. So to me, it's a single car garage, but if you build a new home, they would probably consider that a 2-car garage.
If what?
If you're building a new home, a lot of times you have one 16-foot door, and then they consider that a 2-car garage.
So this is going to be a 16-foot door?
That's presumably what we put, yeah, a 24.
Could you make it a 12-foot door?
You could. You certainly could. Then if you're gonna do that, you'd wanna put a side door or something with a 12-foot door. If you have a car, it's a little bit hard to get a lawnmower or something out. I mean, that's one way.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, and
Should
essentially.
we close the
Yeah,
public
sure.
hearing? Are we finished here? Everybody agree?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, too, I think from a practical standpoint, I think the minimum for I'm looking at the depth because that is, I agree with you that that's adding that extra, foot and a half or whatever, 2 feet. You'd have to make it at least 22 feet and that really doesn't, if you have a larger vehicle, 22 feet is actually very, very tight. So I think that a 24 depth garage is very reasonable for today's standards. I mean, what I'm saying is a 22 foot would be a minimum, but that would be really, we're still increasing that footprint. And so the difference between going to 22 or 24 to me is pretty minimal.
That's another issue is a non-conforming structure where the change is going to increase the footprint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Walsh?
I said, I think that's the decision point.
That's the decision.
I think that's the decision point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ms. Ramey?
Um,
Help us out here.
I think this meets the requirements of a variance in the sense that there are exceptional and extraordinary circumstances for this particular property, particularly the drainage, the walnut tree, the change in elevation and the curve on the property, which make alternatives that would conform to the rear setback. They make those alternatives impractical or dangerous or impossible. So I would be in favor of granting the.
What about the increasing the size of the nonconformity?
I think that I'd consider that de minimis. I mean, when you talk about increasing the nonconformity, I think more what's important is if it were 5 feet from the property line and you were now asking to make it 4 feet from the property line. In other words, making the situation worse in a substantial way. And I think another 2 feet is not enough, I think, to warrant that being a problem.
You mean that
Adding right.
To,
there's an extra 2 linear feet.
But it's on the other
building.
But it's on the other side of the area where you're looking at the setback.
That's right. And it may be true that at one point you have 20 feet of wall that is 5 feet from the property line or 10. I see in these drawings 10 feet, and then we've had testimony of either 5 or over 6 feet, but somewhere in there, say it's 6 feet. you can have a 20-foot long wall that's 6 feet from the property line, or a 24-foot wall that's 6 feet from the property line. And again, I don't think that that expansion is significant enough to be of any trouble to me. I think if there were neighbors here complaining about it, I think that would be,
Well, that's it,
that would be a
yeah.
little bit
No,
more of a problem, but.
Well, I think we all agree that having the affected neighbors give the okay on this is significant.
Yes.
Okay, does any other members have any other thing, anybody have anything else to say on this or need clarification of anything else?
What's your perspective? You've raised section or Article 13.
I have.
What's your perspective on
I
this?
think it's a non-conforming structure and we're increasing the non-conformity.
Thank you.
With all due respect. It has nothing to do with,
Understood.
you know, who the petitioner is or anything. It's the strict reading of Article 13. My opinion. Anything else? Entertain a motion. Speak up.
I will move to approve the variance in the matter of
Here.
is it 23? Oh, no, there, the application.
Here.
Yeah, variance 23001. The Harlow rear yard setback variance at 161 Luella for a 30-foot reduction, allowing a 5-foot rear yard setback rather than the required 35 rear yard setback in accordance with section 36-75 to allow construction of a 24 by 24 foot accessory structure in the same location as an existing accessory structure. The requested variance should be granted due to the following findings of fact. Number one, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the same district. In that there is a large drainage project, including a drainage culvert on the west, north and west part of the property that limit the area of the property that could be built on. There's also a large mature walnut tree which could be impaired if the property garage were built farther to the west. This is an improvement in the existing building because it would be a new structure and would be of greater use to the homeowner. And I would argue that the nonconformity is not being significantly expanded. The required rear setback has been left the same, although there are several linear feet more of wall that will be impairing that, will be in that same setback. My motion would I would argue that there's a finding that is not a significant increase in the nonconformity. Right. The variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other property in the same zone or vicinity, in the sense that other neighbors in the vicinity have garages that are adequate to accommodate their vehicles. And this property should have that same right. That was number two. Number three, the granting of the variance or modification will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or materially injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or district in which the property is located. In connection with that, I would note that the neighbors who would be affected by this support this granting of this variance. The granting of the variance will not adversely, number 4, the granting of such variance will not adversely affect the purpose or objectives of the master plan of the township. And number 5, the circumstances or conditions upon which the variance is based do not result from the actions of the applicant or her predecessors in title. In particular, the circumstances that we're talking about are the conditions that I recited earlier having to do with the unique characteristics of this property and the fact that this was a non-conforming structure to begin with, predated the zoning code. I would note that there were alternatives considered to move the garage to the west, and those are impractical or impossible either because they would require building on the drainage area or destroying the walnut tree that's there. And in that case would also either require a curve in the driveway that would be impossible to navigate, or if the driveway were located to the west of the home, it would require exiting onto the traffic of the road by a dangerous blind curve. And there have been several people who have commented on the danger of that circumstance. So there really are no practical alternatives. So for those reasons, I would move to approve the variance.
Okay, moved by Ms. Ramey, supported by Mr. Wallace to approve the requested variance to allow a 5-yard rear yard setback rather than the required 35-foot rear setback for the reasons stated. Any discussion?
I have one question. How do we make clear that the intent is not necessarily, because there's some, we don't have a survey that exactly says 5 feet. So how do we make it clear that the intent is that it doesn't encroach any further than the existing structure?
Got any ideas on that, Ms. Krebs?
Well, I think it would be up to the contractor to ensure that in the zoning compliance, the new line of the structure would be in the same location as the current structure.
Yeah.
Fair enough,
So-
Ms. Culbertson.
And I think if you say 5 feet, that is the closest it can be to the property line. If it turns out it ends up being 8 feet, that's fine, right? They were getting the variances for 4 or 5 feet at the most. So
Does that satisfy you?
That's fine.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Off.
No.
Culbertson,
Yes.
Ramey,
Yes.
Walsh, yes. Shields.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes, and if you hold on just a moment, Ms. Harlow, I'll give you a written notice of the approval. Let the record reflect Mr. Walsh has handed the applicant notice of decision of the Board of Appeals. Good luck.
I'll give this to the township tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, next item on the agenda is Communications or correspondence. The only thing I have was the email from what appears to be Donald McDivitt. I have nothing else. Anybody else have any correspondence?
I did email a copy of the draft environmental sustainability climate action plan.
I just got it a little while ago. I can't read that in 5
No,
minutes.
I just
time.
wanted to make sure everybody had it.
Yeah, I did. I just scanned it. I was out in the parking lot. I saw it.
You have until May 1st.
It took us 1,000 years to get here.
Okay, old business. Possible action, draft changes to ZBA rules of procedure. And this would be, what tab is it?
Under other.
Under other. Other. Mr. Walsh and I conferred on this after approval from the board to do so some months ago. And this arises from the situation we had some months ago where an applicant did not appear for a hearing, and under the rules of procedure, it's kind of like an automatic dismissal, or it could result in an automatic dismissal for just a failure to appear. And in discussing it amongst ourselves, and then again, Mr. Walsh and I conferred on it, tried to come up with a draft. We came up with this, I guess I came up with the wording. Bob said it was fine. But the intent of the draft is to allow first of all, to say in the rules, number one, the applicant's got to show up. No more, here I've already made my application, that's it, you guys do what you want type thing. So the applicant has to be here. We don't have that in the rules yet, so that's why I stuck that in there. And then the failure to appear, essentially under the draft change, kind of gives them one free adjournment, so to speak. And then the second failure to appear then triggers the possibility of a dismissal and payment of costs and all that sort of stuff. I don't know, first of all, Ms. Krebs, I haven't heard from you on this. I gave you a copy of this a little while ago. Do you have any opinion on this? Because you know what the rules are in the community and your other clients.
Yeah, no, sorry, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze.
What?
I feel like I'm gonna sneeze.
Don't
sorry.
sneeze, no sneeze.
Now that I said it, I won't.
All right.
Every community requires that the applicant appear. This does happen when an applicant forgets or whatever. The costs associated with the meeting, I think, were in question. And if you were to hold the public hearing as noticed, even if the applicant were here, if you would have given any public that were interested to provide their opposition or support of the variance, then you would not have to reschedule the hearing and there would be no additional public hearing associated costs. That's not to say that when the applicant came before you, you wouldn't offer that same courtesy to any of those that would have attended the next meeting. But anyone that came for that public hearing at that first meeting would know that you're tabling it and you're gonna move to the next meeting. I think it's rash to say you didn't show, we're denying you, because once it's denied, they can't reapply for another year unless they change their petition.
Well, under the rules, they could. Under our
Under your
existing
rules.
rules, right now, they could, all they have to do is to come to the chairperson. If I or the other, whatever chairperson you got feels in his or her discretion, it's a good reason, then they can come back. That's the existing rule. What this is, attempts to change to say, hey, first time around, if you miss something, okay, we'll give you a break and we'll put it over to the next one, but you gotta be here, you know? That's what I'm saying. Is that?
I think that's appropriate. I think then the question, if, once you decide that that's okay, as part of your rules of procedure, then you have to determine at that first meeting, are you gonna hold the public hearing or not? And if you don't, you have to renotice it. So there are additional costs involved is what I'm saying. Because you've already noticed a hearing for a meeting that they didn't attend, that you didn't hold a hearing, and now you have to renotice it for the next meeting. And there are publication fees, there are mailing fees, et cetera. And you're duplicating those if this happens.
A question. I mean, as far as procedure goes, you can extend the public hearing, right? You can, isn't there a
Yeah.
process by which you can?
Yes, you would have to actually, because it was notified at that meeting, you would hold it in some fashion. And you would not adjourn it, but you would carry it to the next meeting. So anyone that was there that received notification would understand, and they would also understand that they would have an opportunity to speak at the next meeting. If you were to, the applicant didn't show and you just didn't open the public hearing, then you would have to renotice it and remail it and the whole 9 yards.
But the problem is the costs still are gonna be there if the applicant doesn't show, even if you do have a whole
Sure.
public. I mean, they gotta, we get paid, so, you know, maybe we'll talk about how much we get paid, but, and it isn't terrible, but it's 5 people. Plus, I assume Ms. Krebs wants to get paid.
Yeah.
You do. So there are some costs, yeah.
A couple questions. One is, in your language here, you refer to the appellant. And when we've been talking, we've talked about the applicant. And I'm wondering, is there one accepted terminology that is used throughout the code right now?
I think, I'd have to double check this, I think, because I did this months ago.
Yeah.
And give me a break, but I think I was kind of mimicking what the rule says now. Maybe, let me look.
And while you're looking, my other question, and this is for you or possibly Ms. Krebs, does the applicant have to, without any question, always appear in person, or can they have a representative appear on their behalf?
They can have a representative appear on their behalf. I think they would just have to, just for example, if you're the property owner, you may not always be the applicant.
Right.
And so you could have an attorney or your son or daughter or some other representative be present for you.
As long as they sign off, there's a form or
Yeah,
something.
there's an authorization
Right.
form, yep.
Right. Because I think that this language should take that into account as well.
And the other, I was gonna add is, what is attendance? Because we have allowed applicants to appear via Zoom. So we haven't defined what attend means.
Well, okay, let me,
Yeah.
I'll partially address that and address Ms. Ramey. If you go to the rules of procedure 5.4, it does refer to the applicant, and I believe in other sections of the rules of procedure, we talk about applicant, and of course, I said applicant. I meant to say appellant, because 5.4 currently says an appellant, and remember, it's an appeal. It's an appeal from a denial of the zoning now.
Yeah, I don't think that that's an inaccurate description. I just want to make sure that we're consistent throughout the code.
Yeah, I guess that's what I did.
Yeah.
I didn't give it a lot of thought. But as far as attending, you know what? I think I had in the back of my mind the same question.
'Cause I would,
And I just kind of let it go because of the current wording. And I don't know whether attend is allowed via Zoom, really.
I think the Open Meetings Act requires the board to be present.
Right.
Yes.
Mhm.
it
But there
does.
isn't a requirement, I mean, one of the things that they do, I mean, there is an issue, if there is a technical issue and they're not present, that's a risk.
right,
Because
Oh,
they
you
would
mean like
not,
if the Zoom ain't working?
right, Right.
Yeah.
Or
And-
the
and
Wi-Fi's
that's-
down or whatever. But
right.
Yeah, I don't think it's, I may have looked at the Open Meetings Act. Do you have an opinion on this one?
I don't. Communities do, do it both ways. Those that are hybrid, they will allow their applicants to be via Zoom. That's a choice. Usually though, it's because they're out of town. Most people that are in town, a lot of your applicants are property owners or residents, and they live in town, they're going to be coming here.
Well, according to the meeting notice of today's meeting, and this is general verbiage we always seem to use, I think, it says the Township Zoning Board of Appeals will meet in the meeting hall at Township Hall at such Road. Members of the public may join either in person or via Zoom. Doesn't say anything else. Now, you're right, the Open Meetings Act now requires that the board be present. So from that, suggests to me that the applicant doesn't have to be here in person.
yeah, and we might want to just say an appellate can appear in any manner permitted for members of the public.
I'm just gonna
Permitted
say,
by law.
we don't set what attendance means.
Right, but whatever
Legislature-
that means.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just that, it's one of those things to advise them that, it hasn't happened. I think it happened at Planning Commission. There was a little bit of a glitch. And we conducted the meeting. But that would be,
You do the same thing with.
difficult. Yeah, it would be difficult if, that someone was planning on attending via Zoom and we had a glitch.
but again, worst case, what we've done here is put a mitigating factor in, which is if that fails, they get one more free
Yeah.
opportunity before it's dismissed.
And
So
we-
I think that
And we do
addresses that.
we'd conduct the public hearing and extend it to the, So, you're right, because this sort of takes that into account, so you could do that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea.
So if we permit anyone that the appellant is required to attend the scheduled hearing in any manner permitted as a member of the public,
Yeah,
So-
I think that's clear.
okay? All right, and then, if the appellant fails to appear at the next scheduled hearing, now it doesn't mean necessarily the next month.
Correct.
It's just the next scheduled hearing. The matter will be postponed to the next scheduled hearing. And then failure to appear triggers a possible motion to dismiss. I can't imagine a circumstance where, well, maybe I can, where a chairperson may say, well, hold on, let's not dismiss this because it's a big snowstorm. So, okay. So can entertain a motion which likely is going to result in a dismissal. And then the appellant can seek to reinstate it within 7 days.
Can I give you a hypothetical? Just
Go ahead.
because we said next schedule, part of the reason when we talked to do this was not to schedule another meeting just for this to incur the cost. We piggyback it on another one. Some of these may come in during construction season and they don't want to defer. Do we have to put anything in there so the appellant could pay the costs again to have a meeting scheduled specifically for them and not wait to the next scheduled meeting.
They could
Wasn't
have,
that done already?
yeah, can't they request a special meeting?
They could.
Well, they could request an adjournment from the staff. Can't they grant it if they're willing to pay the cost?
What do you mean?
Well, say a construction season is too busy to come because he's building.
No, I'm saying is they're not here for whatever reason, but we've had some, like this one, we didn't have 2 months in a row. Say someone had come in now and they hadn't shown, but they want to get started because it's construction season, but we may not meet until June again because there's nothing else coming on. Can they specifically trigger another meeting by willing to pay the associated extra
At
fees?
any time, an applicant of the planning commission or the zoning board of appeals can request a special meeting.
Okay,
And there are fees associated with that.
okay, good. That's all. I didn't know that.
Yes.
I just was asking.
So that would give them an option if
If they didn't
we're
want
not
to.
scheduling a meeting because, yeah.
Well, and
And so then there wouldn't be extra fees.
right, and we don't, and as of today would be the deadline for the next meeting. We have, to my knowledge, we don't have a meeting next month. So if something were to happen here where even if something could be postponed and you're gonna meet the next month. So there's always a
Right,
chance you're gonna meet the next month.
Right, I just was asking as a hypothetical. It sounds like there's a process in
There's a
place and that's good. Thank you.
That doesn't need to be in there.
No.
It
So
seems
are you-
reasonable.
Okay,
Are you contemplating, Mr. Walsh, a motion to adjourn to the next scheduled meeting as long as there's another piece of business coming up?
my hypothetical was someone files, thinks everything is straightforward. For whatever reason, they plan on Zoom and Zoom is down. They just think, oh, my application is straightforward. I don't need to be there, which was the one that we had that triggered all of this. For whatever reason, they don't show. But they have a deadline which says, I can't wait more than another month. But we we don't have anything. We know now there's nothing for May, but they go, I have to have a decision by May to get going.
Oh, okay.
So they have the ability to go into the township and say, I need a special meeting.
So we don't have to change anything?
No, we don't have to change
Cover the
anything.
bases.
Yes.
Well-
Should this say, when they say they're required to attend the scheduled hearing, personally or through a duly appointed agent?
Well,
Or is that covered elsewhere in the rules?
Oh, God, I don't know. I forgot the
I would just add it in there and let's
Seems like a
let's
good
go
place to
on.
have it.
Yeah.
It makes it very clear.
Yes, applicant or duly appointed representative, agent, whatever we want to call it.
I would just add it at the end of, an appellant is required to attend the scheduled hearing either personally or through a duly appointed agent.
Hold on, let me just,
I would put it right up front, an appellant or duly appointed agent is
Okay.
required to attend the scheduled hearing.
That's fine too.
all right, run that by me again, Diana.
I think, where it says an appellant
Is
is
required.
required, insert an appellant or duly appointed agent is required.
Well, let me redraft this, for one more time, we'll bring it up again. Is that okay? Yes. I'd rather, let's redo this and just see.
Always easy for us to find things to
That's
change about somebody else's drafting.
I don't mind that. It's just that I don't want to screw it up either, so. Let's redo it. Besides, we don't have anything that's gonna trigger this right at the moment, so.
You interested in typos?
What's that?
Interested in typos?
You think I made a mistake typing this up?
Just in this document. There are some typos.
The minutes.
Not the minutes,
The draft change.
the rules of procedure, within the rules of procedures, not the one we've just talked about now.
There's other, there are others. And they're very minor as far
They
as
are
I
very
can
minor.
find, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, what do you got in mind? Oh no.
You want
I'm
to
not
just,
gonna redraft, I'm not gonna type this all up.
Why don't you just send, Patrick, just send them to me and I'll fix them.
Okey
It's
dokey.
not a big deal.
There we
They're
go.
clerical.
All right.
They are clerical, yes.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
I hesitate to even ask after the heady conversation we're having.
Okay, that's enough of that. Anything else? Anybody have anything else to say on that? So let's go to number 9 on the agenda, approval of minutes of January 19th, 2023. Another great job. I couldn't find anything. I have
I do
nothing
have
written
one.
down. Anybody else got anything?
I have one typo.
Oh, no. Hold on.
Page 7.
Stand by.
Second paragraph,
Okay.
third line, we are the ZBA, not the BZA.
Okay, ZBA instead of BZA on page 7, that's
Second paragraph, third line.
line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the page.
That was it. That was the only thing
The
I
same one I
found.
had.
Anybody else? Motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Ms. Culberson, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Shields to approve the minutes of the meeting of January 19, 2023. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. Next are the no meeting minutes of February 16, 2023 and March 16, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Ramey,
Yes, move to
by
approve.
Ms. Ramey and seconded by Ms.
I have Jan for Ms. Culbertson.
Ms.
first.
Culberson. Okay, motion by Ms. Culberson, seconded by Ms. Ramey.
Yes, second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, that takes care of that. At this point, citizens wishing to address the zoning board of appeal on matters which are not on the public hearing portion of the agenda or seek information on any other matters, such oral presentations should be limited to 3 minutes, except a representative or spokesperson of an organization shall have 5 minutes to address the board. Are there any such citizens? No one is present here. Are there any raised hands?
Yes, Kathleen Brandt.
Kathleen Brandt, go ahead.
Hello, Kathleen Brandt again, Scio resident. I would like to thank Ms. Culbertson, Ms. Ramey, Mr. Shields, and Mr. Walsh for being reasonable in approving the zoning for Ms. Harlow. I would like to see the Scio Township is known as a compassionate place to live. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other hands raised?
No other hands are raised.
Okay, let's go on to agenda item 11, other business. Report of Planning Commission liaison.
Yeah, so the basic, just what we're gonna be working on, we did get budget approval to work with OHM to update our specifications for which would include, the specifications for sidewalks, materials, that kind of thing. They haven't been updated in some time. And I believe it's $30,000 to work on updating ordinances. And this has to do with incorporating, things that we have already noted needing updating and looking at incorporating more sustainability pieces in. We don't have a solar as a principal use ordinance. And we don't have a EV charging ordinance that, just those types of things that some need updating and some new ordinances will be proposed. All, just so people know that all ordinance updates require a public hearing. So there'll be ample public input to those. And then the other item we'll also be working on is looking at the Jackson Road corridor as far as higher density multifamily development And just looking at it as a more of a placemaking proposition, since it's very car oriented right now.
Hey,
Yeah.
while you bring that up, you know those signs that they put up on Jackson Road when it was first built that say, 3600 to 3900 for the address? You can't read them anymore. Has there been any discussion about somebody doing something about that?
There has been discussion, and I do think someone actually got a cost.
That'd be pretty high.
Yeah,
But I
and
mean, otherwise, why are they
the
there?
directional size, I'll note to bring that up. Yeah, so that's sort of the work. We've had a storage facilities seem to be a big thing.
Why is that?
Well, it's.
I don't know.
Okay. That was my thought also.
Evidently people have a lot of stuff and there's a market for it, but.
Yeah, that's all I got. But why put them on Jackson?
And our agenda just came out and again we've been discussing with the folks that are looking for a new use for the theater. And so that'll be updating that PUD is on our next meeting again. And trying to, whittle down uses so that they can market it, knowing that we've approved the
God, I can't
some
believe
use
it. It's a
amendments.
beautiful, huge building. Lots of parking.
So anyway, that's kind of what we're gonna be up to.
All right, very good. The next item is pay for ZBA members. And this was actually brought up by Jessica Flintoff, who I forget exactly. She wrote an email. Did you see this one for the Planning Commission? It basically says maybe it's time to update, the pay for the people that are on the various boards. Well, the Planning Commission and the ZBA and the Board of Review. And I've never given it any thought. I'm not even sure how much we get. I did find out how much it was in preparation for the last meeting, but it wasn't on the agenda, I guess. And now I forget. But I think it's like, is it $100 a meeting?
It's $90 a meeting.
Well, I think the chairperson gets 100.
Yeah, the chair
Big
usually gets a
deal.
little more.
Yeah, see, you're only vice chairperson, so you don't get the big bucks. But I don't, I think perhaps I'm reading it wrong. Perhaps I thought Jessica was suggesting that it be increased. I'll leave it up to the discussion for you people. I'll tell you what my thinking is on it. I never knew how much we got. Every now and again, this check, pay stub comes in the email saying, that's how much can you get? I never asked what it was. I never thought it was real big money, but I don't do it for the money. And I don't think any of us do we?
Yeah, I mean, I said yes, and I did, at the time, I didn't know you got paid at all.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Same for me, yeah.
No one ever,
Yeah.
that didn't get
So
mentioned.
I don't think that that's a place that I feel like the township needs to spend its money, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think the question was asked would we get more diversity on our boards? I mean, and would that encourage, other people to be able to do so? And
I don't think we encourage.
I think there are probably more effective ways to get more diversity on the board, because I think it would take, if someone who needed the compensation, there'd be a lot more barriers
The difference between 90 and $100 is not
Isn't gonna,
yeah.
it would have to be a more substantial kind of compensation, I think.
Well, I
Provide
mean-
childcare.
Or provide childcare, yeah, that would be the other option. Or elder care.
Right, oh, right, exactly.
I mean, that would be, you could offer a reimbursement or something like that. I mean, that might be something to consider, but I don't think a salary, that somebody could put in for reimbursement for a care provider.
I don't think you can. I mean, how do you? I mean, you could do it, but it's creating a little bit of a bureaucracy where none existed before.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a township-wide decision on
Yeah, I
a
guess.
question of broad
I
policy.
suppose you'd have
Right.
to look at the,
Yeah, it would
Zoning.
have to be a policy.
Yeah.
well, we'd have to look at the zoning act. And as far as the planning commission, I'm sure there's a similar type of act. The board of review, geez. Yeah, I guess you'd have to look at that to see whether you could even do it.
Yeah, because I don't think compensation will
I don't think it will.
increase the diversity, but something like that might, which, but I agree, it would have to be a policy.
Yeah, I mean, we do read this stuff, and I know all of us do. I think in the distant past, I got the impression maybe somebody didn't, but I know we all do. And when I say distant, I'm probably thinking at least 20 years ago. But no, I think we just do it because, and well, I didn't know there was any pay either.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
So, what is this?
Well, you can do with it what you want, I suppose, give it away. But I personally don't think there's any, Jessica had also suggested that it go to the review, what do they call it?
Compensation review.
Compensation committee, review committee, unless somebody wants to do that. I don't know, what do you think? Should we do that?
I wouldn't. Why raise it?
I don't.
Take up people's time with it if we don't think
Yeah,
it's
I don't think
necessary.
so. Well, okay, well, we've considered it, and I'll tell her that basically the consensus is pretty unanimous, that we really don't need to go to any compensation review. Maybe in the future, I guess, maybe, I don't know, but not right now. Is that agreeable? Yes.
Maybe you could say, yeah, every 10 years, review it or something, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if it became a real issue, then I want, somebody would go to the board and say something, I suppose. That's what I would think. I wouldn't burden anybody with it. So I'll tell her thank you, but.
And it also, it gets reflected in the fees that people are charged, which
Yeah, it
probably
does.
has it has more impact.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Means more to them than it does to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how do you charge when you expect a reimbursement for
That's true.
childcare? I mean, how much?
More general fund.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's all I got. So anybody else have anything else they'd like to bring up? Did I suggest the motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Ramey, supported by Ms. Culberson to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, we're adjourned at 8:51.
8:49. That's what I got.
Recording stopped.
Right, she's right on it.
What's that? Oh, who are you?
Rob has.
I'm sorry, who?
Deep voice from above.
Yes. This is really, this is spooky. Makes me very
It is
uncomfortable.
spooky. We're not recorded, right?
We are not recording.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, I had noticed.
Well, because you couldn't see them.
How much, well, yeah, you couldn't read them anymore. How much was the cost for repaint? Well, they lasted what? They didn't even last 10 years, I don't think, did they? Huh. Well, you just keep in mind as we go along when.
Yeah, I think that part of it is the DDA can't use its funds for maintenance. It can only use the funds for like capital projects.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that you can't maintain what you.
That seems.
Actually, Ms. Culbertson, that is not correct.
Oh,
They have revised that.
Oh, they have. Oh,
Yes.
good.
All right, I'm gonna end the meeting for all. Thank you. Good night.